by Terry Miller, seconded by Kathy Regier. Be it resolved that the Council Committee of the Township of Whitewater Region adopt the agenda for the February 12th, 2015 meeting. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried.
Okay, Corporate Services Committee. We have a delegation from Jim Pilon from NAPA Auto Parts. You wanted to come forward?
Gentlemen, when you speak, that microphone swivels, if you can just thank you.
Sure. Okay. Hello, Council. I'm Jim Pilon, NAPA Auto Parts, owner-operator. This is Aaron Riopel, my outside sales force. We're here today to ask Council, I guess, on what their definition of local is. I believe my business to be local in the township, even though it is not physically located in the township. We support the township in many ways and forms. Through donating and volunteering, employing residents of the township. Told that the garage in the township has been told to buy elsewhere other than us, and we just need to make sure that that is not the case.
Speaking on behalf of myself, it was my understanding that staff was instructed to see if there are parts, because the staff had said that they weren't available at our local businesses, and however, they were never asked whether they were available, and they were instructed to call there to see if there was anything available. Certainly not to never purchase from NAPA. We certainly appreciate the service and the parts and the timeliness of receiving those parts when it's asked upon you. But certainly by no means were we ever instructing them never to purchase from NAPA. Certainly that, we wanted to make sure that our local businesses were on the day-to-day operations were being given the same opportunity as what NAPA is being given, to ensure that the commercial tax dollars within the township remain in the township. But and that was my understanding of the conversation. But I certainly appreciate you coming out and being forthright, and we thank you for all that you have done with our township, and we hope to continue that very good community involvement with NAPA, as well as purchasing with NAPA. Certainly if there are, I'm sure there are going to be times that NAPA is going to be called upon, because NAPA is a larger store than Cobden Automotive, and I would encourage that continue to happen. We're not discouraging in any way. We just want to make sure that our local businesses, continue to thrive. And one of those suggestions was, if you're saying, as staff, saying that it's never available, then please indicate that if it's not available, fine. And if it continues to be not available, then obviously they have to go other places. But to give that opportunity as well to the local businesses, the same opportunity as they are to NAPA or to Brown's Auto Parts or to anywhere else that they purchase. It's just that they were not given that opportunity at that time.
Okay. As long as they're offering the same services and everything, I have no problems basically sharing the pie. There's lots there to be had.
Okay. Any other council members have any comments? Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, I think part just reading your letter here, and really appreciate you taking the time putting the letter together and pointing out that you guys are a contributor to the region. I think the buy local, there's a comment up here about buy local, and in terms of what we deem it to be. It's more of a common sense approach, and certainly it's not to keep people from outside of Whitewater region from doing business with us. It's more to prevent non-common sense approaches, such as you can drive to the local lumber yard and buy a 2x4 for $2 or for whatever it costs $4, versus having somebody drive to Pembroke because it costs $1.
Yeah, and I
So,
understand that, and that makes sense.
It really goes beyond NAPA Auto Parts. So it's more of a common sense approach to the township buying.
And I agree with that, and part of what I do for services for the township, I believe saves the township money. Because we pick up stuff in Pembroke often and bring it to the township garage at a very minimal cost, that if the township had to run to Pembroke to pick up those parts from Valley Spring and places like that, there's dramatic cost to you guys by the time you put two people in a vehicle usually to go to Pembroke and get the parts and bring them back, downtime. We do offer a lot of services behind what we do.
Anybody else? Yeah, I would have to say, we greatly appreciate your business, and we will continue to purchase with NAPA. We just want to make sure that when staff is looking, that they look within as well. I mean, we have our economic development officer coming up with a local purchasing, a local initiative whereby they're going to be able to go on our website and search if they want to buy shoes. Where in Whitewater region can they buy shoes, and it will come up, that in Beachburg at the hen house they sell shoes, or, whatever it is. So we want to also encourage that in our staff when they purchase. Not that we were going to dismiss any outside business. We certainly don't want to do that, and we certainly can't do that. But we want to make sure that our businesses are given the same opportunity as every other business is. And again, if it's not available or can't be received from those local businesses, and it continues to be that way, then it becomes frustrating, and I don't have a problem with staff saying, look, we've called 10 times for 10 different parts, and that's kind of enough, and we're going to go elsewhere. So we want to make sure that they're given the opportunity the same as every other business is given the opportunity.
And that, I believe, is fair.
Yeah.
And that I do not have a problem with.
Good.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much for
Excellent.
coming out.
All right, thank you for having us.
The next item on the agenda is council remuneration. Yes?
Back up one little bit. Just for review, that was in your package. That was the chart that you had asked for the purchasing bylaw. If everyone could just have a quick review of that, and it's gonna come to council on the 18th.
Okay, if everybody wants to take a look at the amendment to the bylaw to add Schedule A. It just outlines a quick chart to outline what the purchasing is. It's a short version of rather than going through the whole purchasing policy. The only comment that I would make, even though that perhaps that needs to be said that it's in the budget, so that if there is an item between $1,000 and $10,000, and the department heads deems it necessary, as long as it's in the budget and it needs to be done right of way, rather than bringing a report to council as to why it's being added to the expenses. I don't know how you can word that, but as long as it's in the budget, I think it's fine. But I wouldn't want everybody thinking that they have the ability to go out and purchase up to $10,000 per department head at any given time. So I don't know, yeah, but it just says $1,000 to $10,000 CAO in department head. It doesn't say according to budget. If it's a new item, Councillor Olmsted?
The only thing we have to watch is, unforeseen circumstances like blow a motor out of a truck or a plow or whatever. That really, you don't budget that. Has to be pretty clear.
Mayor Johnson?
The most likely large one-shot deal expenditures would be with our equipment. I would think are most apt to be with our equipment, and that's basically a phone call and an email, and a very just to get a consensus of we're not being caught off guard, but they're going to have the right to go ahead and fix it. We just need to know, right? That would be my feeling,
Christine?
Thank you. In the actual bylaw that this chart would become a Schedule A2, in section 4.0, under approval levels 4.1, formal approval of the annual budget constitutes financial approval to proceed with the purchases subject to any scheduling or priority considerations as may be deemed necessary. So that piece is already built into the actual guts of the bylaw, I believe.
Perhaps the wording can just be added to the approval level then, that, according to the budget. I just don't want new equipment, not replaceable equipment, but new equipment purchased. And I'm not saying that you do it, that it's willy-nilly, but I would just hesitate to say that because with your tangible capital assets, what would be your limit when you're recording tangible capital assets? Do you know that? I know for most municipalities it is $5,000, so anything over $5,000 is usually typical as being a tangible capital asset, and it's a purchase, and would require council approval. If an engine goes out and needs to be replaced, obviously it's not going to be, number one, it's not going to be replaced overnight, and it is a priority, obviously, and it has to be done, but certainly that council be made aware that a piece of equipment has gone down and that the engine needs to be replaced at such and such a cost. It'd be nice to know beforehand instead of after.
So I'll bring that back for the 18th then with approval level as per budgeted expenses.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, council remuneration. I'll ask Christine or Marcia to speak to this.
Yeah, I think Marcia can give you the overview of historically where we stand. Marcia, you'll just have to press that mic so that it turns green. I keep it on standby because it burns the battery quickly. There is one thing I would like to note out of the Municipal Act is that council remuneration must be discussed at a public meeting, meaning that this discussion is not allowed to take place in closed session as per the Municipal Act.
Okay, so I've provided you all with the council remuneration sheet here, just to give you guys a little bit of a background. Now, in 2010, for that 4-year term up to 2014, there was actually, from 2010 to 2014, was a total increase of 4.5% overall. We had changed, we used to only give chairs of finance or road $100 a month. And then in 1 second here. On December 1st, 2010, we made that change, and we put all chairs get $100. All chairs meaning every council member at that time sat on a committee as a chair. So that meant every council member minus the mayor, received $100 a month as a remuneration to sit as a chair. Daryl, I think that was one of your questions, eh? You wanted for me to check back to see when we had changed that?
I'm sorry. I was looking because it's before 2010 when we first adopted this system from the former system where you got paid so much per meeting.
Okay. I went back to as far as 2008, and back then we were paying $100 to sit as a chair. So I could go back farther.
It would be back further then. It's before they adopted that.
Okay.
Okay? And it's somewhere, it must be 2007. Would that be the last term? Is that correct?
Well, I have a bylaw here, sorry, for 2007, and I have to go back further then, because it's not in there. So
Okay.
I'll have to go back further.
I think originally what happened when the municipality amalgamated, because they felt that there was so many meetings that were going to occur, the payment for the council, I think Councillor McLaughlin is talking about per meeting rather than
Yes.
per chairperson.
Yes.
That it was paid per meeting, a half-day meeting or a full-day meeting, depending on how many hours. And I believe that was more prior to 2007, probably, I'm thinking, right from 2001 forward, and I'm thinking perhaps 2007 was the actual change, because the meeting times, meeting numbers,
Yeah.
it kind of slowed down. They seem to have picked up again.
Yes, they have.
With having so many new council members. Councillor McLaughlin?
The reason that it was changed is because there was councillors that were making $14,000 and there was other councillors that were making $7,000 because of the amount of meetings that one person wanted to go to compared to the other person. They also got paid to go to the conferences. So, and the reason that it was changed because we felt at the time it was unjust that one councillor be paid that kind of money compared to the other one. That's quite a spread. There was over $5,000 spread at the time. If my mind is, if I remember correctly, I think that was the main reason. It wasn't the number of meetings that really had slowed down from when I started. They were always about the same amount of meetings. I mean, I joined in 2003, and at that time we were paid, as the chair has said, by the meeting plus an honorarium as well.
Councillor Raker?
Can I just ask then, Councillor McLaughlin, with the meetings, did that also include the additional meetings, like the library board meetings and the horticultural site, like the different ones that are...
Well, yes, what it included was any meeting that you would attend as a council rep as well. Some opted to take them, some didn't. I sat on the Historical Society at that time, and I looked around and everybody else was volunteers. And I felt, well, why should I be paid if the rest are all volunteers? But it was up to yourself at the time. You could, if you wanted to, not to. It wasn't set in stone. But you were paid as a library board member. You would get, there was 10 meetings. Whatever meetings you had to go to, the same with the police board, whatever meetings you went to, the veterinary board, the airport commission, every board that you sat on, you were allowed to, at that time, charge your time.
I think instead of going back and finding out, exactly what they were paid, I think we need to look at moving forward with regards to how we sit within the county. I'm looking at within the county and I see that the mayor's salary is 15th out of 17 municipalities. The councillors is, we're down near the bottom. Admest and Bromley is getting paid more um, than some of the other municipalities. We're quite a large municipality. I know up at the County of Renfrew, they did have a separate group do a study for county council remuneration, and I'm wondering if we could find out perhaps from the county how they went about that, and if there was a cost to that for those individuals to review it, and then take a look at it that way. I think it's important. I know I've filled out these reports before every year, and it includes a lot of other things that some municipalities include and some don't. Some municipalities include the benefits. Some municipalities have life insurance and dental and health benefits that they give to their councils. Some don't. So that skews the actual salary. It is a benefit. It is to go towards that person. Sometimes it will also include an education portion, and some people include it, some people don't when they actually do the reporting. So it does skew it. It would be nice to actually see the bylaw from these municipalities rather than looking at how the county has put it together, because it's very difficult to look at it that way. But I would recommend that perhaps if council wishes, if the Corporate Services Committee wishes, that we have Marcia ask the county council how they went, the county, how they went about reviewing their salary grid for council, if that's fair. Any, Councillor McLaughlin?
Just on that note, and I was here when they did the last one, and what we did, we took the services of Bruce Beakley, who gave us, he went through it. I don't know exactly how he did it, but he came back with scenarios for us, and that's the way we decided on where to have it sat. So I agree with you. I think it needs to be somebody from the county or outside that has a look at it, and because I think around the table we're just looking for it to be fair. It's what we're doing. So I think to be objective, we need to have somebody from outside the municipality or the people to look at it. So it's just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Okay, so do you require a motion for that or just direction to staff? Perfect. That's my agenda. Okay, next item on the list is the employment bylaw for officers and staff. Christine?
Thank you. This it speaks to the annual cost of living allowance, which keeps salaries floating along in lockstep with the consumer price index. I'll hand out a new salary grid, obviously for privacy. We do not put onto the grid exactly at what step each employee is. That's privileged information. So I'll just pass these 1, 2, 3. So Marcia has calculated the new numbers here, including a 2.4% cost of living allowance for 2015, which is the same amount that we were building into the council bylaw as well. That's the November to November figure.
Is there a policy in place, Christine, that allows you to say, okay, it's the October CPI that you're going to look at to determine, or the November CPI that you're going to look at to determine the increase, and then it wouldn't have to come back necessarily to council each time?
There isn't a policy per se, Madam Chair, that I'm aware of, but the practice has been to look at the November to November numbers from going back in
question, is that the November report that comes out in November, which is actually the October CPI, or is it the November CPI? Okay, for Ontario. We do have a policy at Laurentian Valley that addresses this item, and I would recommend that you bring that, it works out. Last year, the October to October was 0.7, and that's what staff received. This year, council doesn't like it so much because it's 2.4. And 1 year it was actually 2.7. But overall, I think when you look at the average, the ups and the downs, it certainly goes along with what's happening in Ontario at the time, and it does seem fair overall when you do look at it that way. Councillor McLaughlin?
I think if you go back to past practice here, we didn't go with the consumer index. I think most of the time it was with the union raise. They received the same as what the union received. So I'm wondering at that point, because there is no union rate right now, if we could table this to further along after we have done our negotiations. It's just an idea, because I know, and I'm correct in that, am I not, Marcia?
Yes.
Other than last year, I think it was always in line.
Yes, or we always went in line or perhaps a little bit more than the union. Last year we were below what the union got, which runs close sometimes to like a 2.4. Last year we got 2. It just sometimes it will fluctuate. Now we don't have our contract has run out, so with the union, so we're going to be working on those numbers soon. The only thing that I would suggest to help the payroll department, because it is a lot of work, if we wait till the union, I like Charlene's idea, and the only reason why, if we wait till the union, we have to go back months and months and do retro pays, and then I don't want to have errors in there, but there's possibly could have errors, and we don't want that. And it'd be a lot less work if we passed it, say, something every year, and we start the new year. It helps for the budget of the following year to get those numbers so that we know what to budget for. That's right.
Councillor McLaughlin?
The only reason I say that is because we have not set a rate with our union employees yet. And if we set this rate, then that's setting a precedent, and I don't like that idea. So I really wish, and I realize and I understand, but it's the wishes of council.
I think there are some benefits. There should be some benefits of being part of a non-union group as opposed to a union group, as well as there are benefits to being part of a union group as opposed to being part of a non-union group. I think it's important that if we're ready to do the non-union, that we can proceed. If the union negotiations come in at a drastic rate difference or above and beyond what the negotiation is for the policy, I think we can look at that. But I think it would be nice to have in place prior to January 1st the rate for the non-union employees, that they get it right away, and it starts from there. So there is no retro back to the beginning of the year, which does complicate a lot of matters. And it can be done simply in the December meeting once we get the November rates. Unfortunately, they don't really publish them until about the 21st, typically. And that's one reason why Laurentian Valley uses October, because it gets published November 21st, and it moves forward in the December meeting, so it's ready for January payroll. But I personally would recommend that, because then you're ready for January payroll January 1st, because it does get published November 21st.
And that's October
Count,
I'm sorry, from not Stats Canada, but what?
we just take the overall CPI increase, which for the CPI in October was 2.4, which is interesting. In November, the Ontario one was 2.4. Councillor Olmsted.
Marcia, can either you or Christine just explain what the step system is? Is that a course completion or years of service, or what does that entail?
No, actually, the step completion, we have an appraisal that comes due January 1st of every year. So your department head and CAO will sit down with each non-union member and go through their appraisal, see what their objectives were, if they've, met them, what their goals are, perhaps any training that they had done. And there's a discussion there with the employee. And then at that point, then, if it's satisfactory to the CAO, then, and the recommendation from the department head, then that employee will be moved up to the following step. Yes.
Would like to mention at this time, Councillor, just so everyone's aware, this grid, I believe, has not been reviewed now for 5 years. I have been discussing it with Bruce, and there definitely, in my mind, is an issue when you have reached step 6, which many of our employees have. They've been here a long time. At that point, then, you're completely, there is no incentive for further training and improvement if all you can look forward to for the next maybe 15 or 20 years of your career at Whitewater Region is a cost of living allowance with no merit increase, which would be based on achieved goals. That wouldn't be a given to continue on into another step. So, short answer, to just kind of condense what we've been talking about, the grid system has been set up as per pay equity legislation. Yes, annually you do advance to the next step on the condition of a successful performance appraisal. But there is an issue that we have when an employee gets to step 6, and we have several senior employees at that stage, and when I review this with Bruce and we come to council with recommendations, certainly I think it's time to build some kind of merit increase in to continue the grid on past step 6 to incentivize our employees. That's not always possible. Yeah, just depending on really the job function and description. Not everyone is promotable to the next group.
Most municipalities do have step 1 to step 6. The county does have a merit increase at the end, like a sort of a step 7, and they give it to the employee upon successful completion of the performance appraisal once they've reached step 6 as a bonus, and it's a one-time payment. Most municipalities deal with step 1 to 6, and if there are problems with employees, there are other steps that can be taken other than giving them a bonus for doing a good job, or not giving them a bonus for a good job. In my opinion, everybody is supposed to do a good job, and if they're not fulfilling their duties, then certainly there has to be other ways of dealing with that, but to give them a bonus just because they're doing a good job each year isn't fair to the ratepayers and isn't fair to each individual employee either. We all expect our staff to do their job well and continue to do that even once they receive step 6. I'm not in favor of doing a bonus round each year. Councillor McLaughlin?
Just back to the topic we were on. Are we looking at a 2.4% raise this year, but adopting the system that you're talking about? Is that the idea? Because I'm willing to do that as long as we go to a different form than what we've been following over the years, uh, which was in tie with the union. So if we're gonna do this, and it's a 2.4% with, is it, what formula are you using?
I think it's the easiest way for
No.
staff as to go forward.
Yeah.
And then when this is reviewed, like Christine is saying, when this pay grid is reviewed with pay equity in mind, with Bruce Beakley, who does quite a number of these, that I'm suggesting that a bonus round not be included. But certainly, it's my suggestion, we'll take this one step at a time. We'll go first, we'll do the increase, and with a policy in place that it happens each year, with the understanding that the treasurer bring forward a report to council as to what that increase is.
You've answered my question that I wanted answered,
Thank you.
and I'd be in favor of that.
Okay. Is there any other questions from council? Reeve Miller?
Yeah, just looking at the step 6 numbers, I'd be interested in knowing how those county averages, and that would help us with that decision as well. Just at a glance, I think it's a great thing to be working for Whitewater, and if you're getting, the consumer price increase every year of 2.5, there's incentive enough there to do your job right there. Because what else is there around here? That's all I really got to say about it.
I think when it's reviewed with regards to the pay equity, that's something that Bruce does, is he reviews what other municipalities are paying for each individual position. So I would say that at that time, that will be reviewed. And looking at it, I would say that it's fairly fair at this time, these rates, compared to some other municipalities that I'm aware of. But that's something that Bruce will take care of when that pay equity grid is reviewed, and that's supposed to be reviewed every 5 years. So that will be done this year with Christine and Bruce. But certainly, I can forward you the policy, and perhaps if council's interested in that, going to the October or whichever month I just feel that the October one is the easiest because it gets published November 21st, thereabouts. It's always that third Friday of the month. The CPI gets published, and therefore it can be passed in December, ready for January 1st implementation. If that's okay with council, we can bring that forward to the council meeting. All in favor for that? Perfect. And then we'll leave the pay grid up to Christine and Bruce later on. Okay? Mayor Johnson.
I just have one question on the pay grid. One question on the pay grid. I'll start it for you. Do we have a chart of qualifications to meet step 6 for our employees, like degrees and qualifications that have been met?
I think whenever somebody is hired, the step 6 is the cost of that individual's position. If they're hired, then they've been hired on their qualifications, and it doesn't mean that you have to have a certain qualification unless it's in their agreement that if they were to achieve certain qualifications during their employment within a certain time, then that should be in place. But if it's not in their employee agreement, this is the job level, that is the final job level, and they were hired to do that job, and therefore that's what the maximum pay is at that time.
If an employee had that on a condition, then that should be met to go to the next step, right? Just looking for clarification.
Yes, I would think so, and I'm sure Christine has reviewed the employees' employment contracts to make sure that those conditions have been met.
The only employee who's under contract is me. Everyone does have a job description. There is an expectation that ongoing training will happen, and part of your successful employment appraisal on an annual basis is the fact that there's continued growth and education and learning. That's part of it. But to my knowledge, there isn't a stipulation excuse me, in anyone else's employment term of specific education benchmarks, with the exception of me.
Thank you.
Any other questions with regards to remuneration for staff? I think that ends my term up here. Is that it for me? Community hall rental fee. Yep. Yes. Perfect. Okay, community hall rental fee. Christine?
Councillor McLaughlin had asked that we bring this forward, and I believe if you look at the second page in the bylaw under Administration Department, and it's actually item number 8, Memorial Hall, and I believe Councillor McLaughlin wanted to talk about maybe breaking down some different categories there depending on the nature of the community group who's renting the hall downstairs.
Was there any suggestions, Councillor McLaughlin?
Well, I just need some clarification because I'm kind of confused. I mean, I know that the Civinettes use the hall every week, every Monday night. Are they charged? Are the seniors, is there a levy for them? This is clarification that I need, and Marcia's going, well, there's where I'm starting. If they're not charged, because it all came to a head whenever the Cattlemen's Association, I guess, rented the hall, and the lady came in to return the key and was told her charge was $75 because they'd used it for 3 hours. It's not a person like myself that's renting it, and I think that's where we need to have clarification. I know whenever I used it for the Historical Society to have a meeting, there was no charge. So I don't, if we're going to do this, then I guess we can't charge one without charging them all. And
Question for you, Councillor McLaughlin. When the Historical Society used the Memorial Hall for a meeting, was it during the day, night, or weekend?
at night.
At night. So was somebody here to open up for you and close, or was there, you had your key and you were able to use it?
I had my key, and I was able to open it. I remember Patsy came in. No, I don't know.
She might have been there to clean or
She
otherwise.
may have had some reason, but she was there. I remember that for a reason.
Christine?
Thank you. In my almost 2.5 years here now, I don't have a lot of experience with this, but I do know certain groups, such as the Muskrat Watershed Council, that the previous council pledged to support in its endeavors. We don't charge them when they're meeting downstairs. So I guess certain groups we do charge as per the bylaw, and certain groups apparently we don't charge. So what I would like to suggest is that we draft up some kind of appendix to this schedule that lays out which groups are charged and which groups are not, or it needs to be defined in a comprehensive way rather than sort of an ad hoc, oh, we'll waive the fee.
Perhaps a simple way of doing that is for not-for-profit organizations, Memorial Hall, which is for um, for meetings if so chosen. If there is a requirement for somebody to come and open and close, then I think there should be a minimal fee. If they're meeting during the day and it's office hours, then I don't see a problem with no charge. But if it's in the evening and they don't have access to a counselor's key, or if somebody is not on that committee and they actually physically need somebody to open and close for them, there should be a minimal charge, in my opinion. Councillor Mackay.
I think the cattlemen's were kind of peeved off because they usually had their meeting at the Ag Hall, but there was a Santa Claus parade, so they were pushed out of there, and they came here and they were charged. That's what Miles England told me, that kind of, because they couldn't have their meeting.
Reeve Miller?
Yeah, I'd just be curious, how many charged meetings were there at $75 in 365 days? Then we should just scrap it. No charge. Let them use the facility. They're all from Whitewater. It's not, we're not out anything. And then it makes it easy.
Councillor McLaughlin?
I can agree with Reeve Miller, but I do like the chair's idea where it's non-for-profit organizations. I think that's the ones, if it's somebody, if it's a personal, a person, an individual that's renting it, then yes, I think these charges should be in place and they should be levied. But when it is non-for-profit, I think it's something that we could do to help and stimulate our community, and I think it's a great gesture as well.
Mayor Johnson?
I think it's a great idea to make it available. I also feel that if it's going to be in the evening and require somebody to open it, that will cost money, so that should be reimbursed. Also, I think we should have something written into this where they have to clean up, so that it's not left for our staff to clean up. Other than that, I'm all in favor of free.
Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, I like the idea of not-for-profit, but I think we have to define what those groups are, because you'll have 200 not-for-profit organizations come to us, and that includes everybody from a bikers club to 4-H to 7Ets. We displaced out of this place, right? I think that's why the 7Ets actually got the bingo downstairs. Displaced out of this hall years ago. So I think we just have to define what these organizations are.
I think a non-for-profit, and if there's a question, then perhaps we can leave it up to staff to bring it forward to council whether or not there would be a charge for the rental, and why they feel there is a charge for a rental, why they feel it's not a not-for-profit. But typically, I don't believe we're going to get inundated with requests to use our facilities. And if we do, then we can address it at that time. But to go ahead and try to recognize every group within Whitewater Region who can and who can't, it's a lot easier to bring up the one-offs than it is to identify those who can. Councillor McLaughlin?
You answered my question. We can revisit this as well. Now, there is an issue, like if there has to be cleanup, would a minimum charge of, say, $20 for the night, would that be something that could be built in? It's just a thought that I'm throwing out, and I don't think that any organization would have a problem to pay that much. Like you say, we can revisit it and see where it goes.
Christine?
Thank you. Just to catch you up historically, to my knowledge, there's never been a problem with people not cleaning up. And there are certain groups who do meet in the evening. We have a secret hiding spot for the key, and then they return it through the drop box, which doesn't require anyone to be here, and it's always worked perfectly well. So if you wanted, we could amend this bylaw to say something about, not-for-profit groups excluded. However, I'd also
it. I don't know if these fees are going to be revisited this year with regards to the budget or not, but I would suggest perhaps the next time it is revisited for charges, that we do put the not-for-profit in it at no cost, just to make it clear for everybody and to be upfront. Is that okay? Not to go ahead and change it now, but have staff know that there is no charge for not-for-profits, and when it is revisited, the next time that it be included. Okay? And the next committee on the agenda, which I've lost, is economic development.
Where now? Where are we now?
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:50 of the Economic Development Committee. And yes, I got this too. What?
That was scheduled for 7.
Oh, I see. Hey, perfect.
I'm gonna wash all that. You got 4:39.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin suggested we're scheduled for 7 o'clock for this meeting. We're going to take a 10-minute break here and then come back.